We're rolling. Hey, everybody. We are back from our podcast. Wouldn't call it a hiatus, but it kind of was a hiatus. We built a new studio. This is brand new. This is the first podcast in our new studio. Soundproof.
And we have that awesome sign.
Yep.
Right?
So, everything's new.
If you guys have any cool stuff that we absolutely have to put on the wall, we're not opposed to putting stuff on the wall that you send us.
Yeah, send it our way.
Like bobbleheads.
Fancy doodads and knickknacks, especially.
Collectible spoons. Right?
Lance is sitting over there going, what?
Super Bowl trophies.
Super Bowl trophies?
Whatever.
Yeah, we haven't done a podcast in
do we even know what episode
months.
This is?
I don't even know. So we can't announce an episode.
Okay, episode number. Brigham, edit this in. I have to talk like Yoda to get Brigham to listen because he thinks he's a young Padawan.
But the big thing right now is the shop is going in business downstairs. We are upstairs in the middle of the day. Soundproof studio hopefully gives us the opportunity to make more podcasts, do more at the same time. We're releasing. It won't be live anymore, so if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments below. If you're on a podcast, hop onto our socials and say hi there. So today, what are we talking about?
We're going to talk about the perception of being a good angler. What does it mean to be a good angler? But more than that, we're going to talk about kind of expanding your horizons. We see it all the time. We have a very popular fishery right in our backyard in the Provo River. And there are lots of guys that can go there and catch fish. There are also lots of guys that leave the Provo River and then they struggle. So,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I had, this is years ago, but the same thing applies. I was fishing a stretch and I'd just gotten there a few minutes before, and this guy walks up and he just stands there on shore and he's watching me. And I'm like, hey, how's it going? And he basically said that was like the magic spot where he knows he can catch fish, and he was going to wait until I was done.
Right.
And I said, well, I mean, literally there's thousands of fish in this river. This is not the spot. So, and I think that's part of the problem. People have success with a certain method or a certain fly or a certain spot, and rather than branch out and kind of become a better, well-rounded angler, they tend to gravitate to what they're confident in.
Sure.
Which is understandable.
Yeah, naturally. Nothing wrong with that necessarily, right? But to your point, if you wanted to, we have the opposite of that happen too, where people come from another place and they visit the Provo River up the street here, and even though there's 3,000 trout per mile, they don't catch anything because they only know how to catch fish in one place on one river with one technique, or maybe we're generalizing a little here, maybe being a little harsh. Maybe they know 2 or 3 techniques, but they don't have a wide variety of techniques and confidence in different tactics that will allow them to adapt to different rivers and different situations.
Yeah, in fact, we had 2 guys came in the shop this morning. They were from out of town, and they had gone with a guide the day before, and they were commenting on how the guide said none of the flies in the Provo fish well if they have flash or color in them. Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
that's an example of, well, yeah, maybe in that particular person's experience, that's what they're confident and that's what they gravitated to, rather than experiment with kind of different fly colors, different fly sizes. And so these guys were like, well, we thought that was odd, so we didn't try anything different. We stuck to exactly those ones.
Right.
And then they started asking me about different patterns and techniques. I'm like, yeah, knock yourself out. That would be great. So I think the overall purpose here is learn to be better, well-rounded anglers by virtue of maybe trying different techniques, different spots, different flies. Just branch out. Don't limit yourself.
So one of the things I always say is, like, you know, every single person, well, most of the people that come in the shop are smarter than the fish, right?
Most,
yeah. So with that, like
some of the employees,
like Brigham, yeah, me, yeah, that's true.
No, it's
your
not.
boss is dumber than a fish, Lance. What does that say?
It means that I'm really dumb.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm glad we got that out of the way. But just if you have the skill set and you know that there are fish in the river, just be confident. Go out there and fish it like it's your home water. And chances are, if you're confident in your stuff, your presentation is going to be better. You're going to focus on really dialing it in to try to catch fish, and then all it takes is one fish on your stuff in a different spot. And for me, that's a really cool feeling, right? When you're just like, okay, I'm going to try something new. I've never fished here before, but we're just going to go give it a try. And then having success in that type of situation, to me, is like the ultimate. That's super fun.
Agreed. So we're trying to encourage you to not be the one spot wonder, where, like you were talking about, the person that waits, that gets to the river, and if there's somebody in their spot, they kind of try and pressure the other people out because that's where they have to be. That's the only place they know how to catch fish. We want to encourage you to not be that person.
Yeah.
Spread your wings a little bit, get out and try something different.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're all right.
I was just going to say that you see this all the time, that say on the internet, someone posts a picture of a fish on Facebook, or we do a video, we post a picture of a fish, and people say, well, I need to know where that is. I need to know what you used. And it's like, okay, we're not ever going to tell you those spots. Like, you don't need us to tell you those spots. Just get a map and kind of explore, and you might find something even better.
Yeah, half the adventure is figuring it out, not having somebody spoon feed it to you.
Yeah.
But the norm nowadays is to not let those spots out. And it's not because you're being a jerk. It's just because with the internet the way that it is, you can't just blab about whatever spot and hope that you're going to be able to keep that secret. Yeah, it's cool to brag if you caught a cool fish, but how bad do you want visitors trudging up the river in front of you?
So. Well, like a good example of that, and one of the reasons why we tend to not mention exact locations, it's not because we're trying to prevent people from branching out. It literally is because so many people listen to what we have on our channels that would awkwardly overload certain spots. But talking with a buddy this week, and this is a good example of kind of going out on your own and figuring stuff out. He had gone to a lake that we've fished before, and it was a little lower, so the spots that he knew were basically dried up, or not dry, but they were mostly
super shallow,
not super fishable. Mm-hmm. And so that forced him into some other areas of the lake that they had assumed weren't too fishy. And I was the same thing, I said, well, I didn't realize there was that many accessible locations on that lake, and they just destroyed. I mean, they had such a good time. Cool. So I think that's another thing. Like when I was in college and I was fishing a river that I had known, and I had kind of my honey holes, I said, I get out there the day and I realized it was so crowded. There was people in every hole, and so rather than just bag it and go home, I decided I'm going to fish all new locations with different techniques. And so I didn't do my typical nymph rig. I think I ended up with a dry dropper, and this was during a Baetis hatch. And I had one of the better days I've ever had because I was just fishing water that nobody was focusing on. I think the fish were bigger. I sort of learned a lot because I was forced to kind of get out of that comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And so I walked away from that with some new tools to add to my quiver, which I think we can do whether it's our home river, home lake, or any other one that we may go to fish.
Yeah.
So I ran into a situation like that. I was in Colorado and I went and fished Deckers. It's kind of like
it's the
Grand Central Station, and
Colorado.
Talked to a bunch of people. They knew I was going there, and they're like, you have to do this, you have to do that. You've got to fish this rig, you got to fish that rig. When I got there, I see like a kind of a nice trough that everyone just kind of walked by, and I'm like, that's a streamer hole. So I threw a complex twist bugger in there, and like third cast had a fish. So not saying that would have killed all day, but that's one thing that you get caught up in on a river system. Euro nymphing, we hear this all the time, Lance. It's like, okay, I want to see you try that on a tailwater. Mm-hmm. The fish are too picky to eat that stuff. Well, how often do you Euro nymph tailwaters?
Yeah, most of the time around here, because that's what we have is mostly tailwaters.
And it works, right?
Works magically.
Little bit. Even Lance can catch fish sometimes.
When I'm not being dumb. So no, in all seriousness though, we want to just encourage people to, as we've said, broaden their horizons. Go find a new river, explore it. You don't necessarily even have to have somebody drop you a pin. Just look at it on a map, look at it on Google Earth, and go figure it out. Find access points, find different water types. Try a small stream if you're fishing a larger river. Try high altitude lakes or still water, or chase some warm water species, bass and carp and muskie and pike, and all those are really, really fun. In fact, we've had some of our guys that work here have got a little in-house competition going amongst themselves.
A lot of hurt feelings.
Where they're trying to catch multiple species, and it's been really cool to see all of them chase different species, take them out of their normal haunts and make them go different places, because they're catching catfish on flies and walleye and tiger muskie and things that they maybe have chased a little bit before but have never really tried to focus in on. And it's been really cool to see all of them have their new experiences with these new species.
So if I think that people probably have a little hesitation with trying new spots, because it's something, I don't know, are there fish in there? How fishable is the water? What's the access like? Is it private? Is it public? So maybe going through those objections or those concerns that people have, I guess number one would be, if I find a lake, let's say, on a map, how do I know that there's even fish there?
Well, you don't necessarily know right out of the gates, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you could look up angling reports or stocking reports, or there's lots of ways to figure that kind of stuff out. But there again, I guess I would play the other side of that. We live again right next to a river that has give or take 3,000 trout per mile, and people come in every week and say they think it's fished out. So even if you know there's fish there, that doesn't mean that they're easily catchable. Yeah. But there's ways to figure that kind of stuff out. Curtis gets crazy with his spreadsheet nerdiness with stocking reports and all that kind of stuff. But
you should see my spreadsheets.
I don't think
I just don't talk about them much, but they're pretty good.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
No, but there's lots of ways to find
But
information.
Going along with that though, that's a good point. I do have stocking reports going back years and years. Mm-hmm. But I can't tell you how many times I've talked to somebody that's fished an area that has no stocking history.
Yeah.
Or if it did, it's from like 2005 or something.
Sure.
No trout's going to live that long. And especially if they're stocking sterile fish or something. But where we hear of people just saying, I think that there could be fish in there, or that I've seen a report going back. So really the best way is to go try it, Right. Worst case, you don't catch anything. Best case, you've either confirmed or whatever that the fish are in there. So I mean that's probably the easiest way.
Yeah, I mean you got to use some common sense. You're not going to go to a 10,000-foot lake in winter months. You're not going to go to a small stream that's only accessible in the summer when it's freezing cold out. You got to use some common sense. But yeah, you're going to go find new places that with very little research. And you don't need somebody to spoon feed you all that information. You need to know there's some fish there, of course.
Yeah.
But even if there's not, have the fun. Before the internet existed, I had a good friend that I kind of cut my teeth fishing with when I was pretty young, and we just got the old DeLorme Atlas paper, before the interwebs, the old paper atlas, and we would just look at blue lines and go, you know what are we doing this weekend? Let's go check out this one or these. If the first one's dry or something, then we go. And some of them were gutters, and some of them are good-sized creeks. And we stumbled upon lots of cool little streams that I'd never even heard. I know people had fished them before, but I'd never heard of anybody fishing them. So it was fun to just go, spend a little time in the mountains and find new places that are at least less pressured.
And I think it's something that's important to set yourself up for success on like a new adventure like that is, number one, practice your casting. You never know if you're going to have to do like a curve cast or a bow and arrow cast, or you need distance or whatever. So the more casts you have in your arsenal, including casting for distance, important when you're trying new things. The other thing is fly selection. You have a little bit of everything, right? Have different sizes of tippet, different indicator sizes. So you have to be just kind of set up for all of that. I mean, because if you only have stuff to do like an indicator rig on the river with really, really small nymphs, you're gonna be stuck like that. So,
Right.
Practice your casting, practice setting up different rigs. That's a huge one. Like one time we had a guy come in. This was years back. I think you remember this, Curtis, but he was adamant that we tie him the nymph rig that's used around here, the bounce rig. So we tied one up. He goes up to the river. 20 minutes later, he was back in the shop. He's like, "Hey, I broke it off. Can you retie it?" We're just like, "Okay, here's the deal." Yeah. How many times do you want to keep coming down the canyon? Because that's part of learning how to fish that technique. But if you learn how to tie all the knots, if you learn how to, if you have a good selection of flies, if you have a good arsenal of casts that you can do, you're going to set yourself up to be able to fish way more effectively on these new waters as well.
Right. All right, let's change gears. What if you don't have a lot of rivers near you? Because not everybody does. Some people live in places where they just have, within a few hours drive, they have kind of one trout fishery. So if that's the case, then one thing I would suggest to spread your wings is just trying new techniques. We have a tendency as anglers to get, dialed into just one thing. We only indicator nymph, or we only Euro nymph, or we only streamer fish, or we only do this and that. And again, if that's how you choose to fish, that's up to you. You get to decide that. But to become a more well-rounded angler and improve your fishing overall, I would suggest taking up some new techniques. Just go to the same, even if it's the same river you fish every time, that's cool. But instead of nymphing, leave all your nymph stuff home. Force yourself to throw streamers, or force yourself to throw dries. Try dry dropper. See how you can attack different water types with different techniques, and learn about the casting and the rigging and water types that maybe you focused on with the nymph rig are not very good with the dry, or dry and a dropper, and you need to focus on different water types. And experiencing that and learning all of the intricacies of those different techniques is going to make you a better angler.
I hear this all the time. People ask you, Lance, they're like, "Well, how long ago was it that you switched to Euro?" It's like, well, switch, no, like you're just adding that to your arsenal. It doesn't mean that you're never going to throw an indicator. It doesn't mean you're not going to nymph other ways. It's just you're practicing that, and obviously with the competitions, that's a big deal. But there's no such thing as switching or exclusively doing this, that, or the other.
No, we don't ever encourage that. Really, we don't encourage people to hang up other skills just to only Euro nymph. We can encourage people to Euro nymph a lot because it's very effective and learn that technique. But that doesn't mean it's always the best technique in every situation. In fact, people come in all the time and say, you guys were up on such and such lake. I saw that. How do you Euro nymph there? And you're like, well, you don't Euro nymph the lake. I thought that's all you did. No, why would you only want to do one thing? There's so many techniques.
Yeah, we probably get that more because you do the competitions. People like, well, Lance does dry fly fishing? Well, of course he does, because he likes to catch fish.
Right.
And not only just a type like general dry fly fishing, but things like the little caddis technique, popping the caddis as the dropper. I mean, that's an awesome, there's a video on our YouTube channel if you want to check it out. But that's a really cool technique. It also happens to be incredibly fun.
Mm-hmm. Very visual.
Yeah, very visual, and like the takes are savage. And I mean, that in and of itself could be one where you say, hey, there's a caddis hatch going on at some local river. I'm going to go, and that's what I'm going to do.
I'm going to dial in that technique.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you think that you know everything already, you're not going to be receptive to something like that. It might be some dude that you've never met that maybe is not even as good as you at other things, but they've got a technique that they have dialed. Speaking of the techniques, though, like I do conventional gear a ton for bass. Like I love fishing that way. Super techie. For me, it's really fulfilling to go out and catch bass, when they're hard to find and they kind of have lockjaw. But learning those bass techniques has made me a better angler all around, because you're still trying to solve a problem. You're still trying to get the fish to eat. You're putting together a pattern as well. Okay, I caught a fish on this one, and then it changed up, so I'm gonna try this color or this different technique. Yeah. So, in my mind, fishing's fishing. If you're getting good at one type of fishing, a lot of times techniques kind of transfer over, right? So I'm the bass fishing heathen here.
I don't think you're alone there.
That's awesome.
There's also, I don't know how to describe this, but people just get into ruts, let's call them, right? Where they just only do that one thing. And Well, that's what we're trying to, as you can see, get you out of. Some other ideas there is things like trying different water types. So most indicator folks, which is I think the most common rut, the most common rabbit hole we see people go down. Maybe your own nymphing is the new version of that. But there's certain water types, especially with an indicator rig, that people gravitate toward when they mostly indicator nymph. And it's very effective. We're not here telling you that you should change it because it doesn't work. That's not it at all. It's very effective. But when the river's crowded, for instance, and all the big deep holes that everybody loves to nymph are all taken, that's a good opportunity for somebody to look at it. And instead of getting kind of bothered by it being a crowded day, just look at the water and go, I'm going to cover it with something else. So go from the pools to pocket water, or go from pocket water to pools if you're used to fishing pocket water, or go from flats or riffles to flats, flats to riffles, something like that. Just mix it up. There's fish, especially in the summer months, the fish tend to spread out a lot.
Yeah.
They're in various water types. The wintertime, it's maybe a little more limiting, but when the water is, let's say, high 40s or 50 and better, the fish spread out a lot. And you can find them in all kinds of water types that would allow you to cover new water types and just learn about them.
I had an experience just up on the Middle Provo. It's a tailwater. Most people are fishing real tiny stuff, real small tippet. And it was one of my first years of really Euro nymphing. And I had a size 10 stonefly and a size 1 worm on. And I was just cleaning up. But it was because I was fishing the section of water that no one else wanted to fish in between two big holes.
Right.
So as I was coming up to the tail end of this hole, I was going to leapfrog these guys, walk upstream a little bit. And this guy stops me. And he's like, what are you using down there? He's like, I've been watching you and you're catching fish behind every rock. And so I held up my flies. I said, this is my rig. And his response was, I fish this river twice a week. That stuff does not work here. And I'm like, well, you're fishing that water. The fish in that slow hole have a lot of time to judge what's food and what's not compared to where I'm fishing.
Right.
Where if a fish reacts on that worm fly, even though it's big, and that's real food for them, they're probably going to eat it because they're not going to react all the way out there and get out into current and waste a bunch of calories without trying to eat something. Mm-hmm. So what I realized, though, like doing that stuff, I was catching like 2 fish at a time, and it was just crazy. But that's just purely because I branched out. And in those different water types, you'll find that the fish are keyed on different types of bugs sometimes. And sometimes they're bugs that are way funner to fish than like a size 26 zebra midge.
Right.
So
I had a similar experience just the other day. I was on a small stream at high altitude, and I was fishing some kind of shallow flats in crystal clear water where the fish are known to be very, very spooky and very selective. And I'd been fishing there for just long enough to maybe catch a dozen fish or so, and I hooked a fish, and on a high bank above me, all of a sudden I heard a loud voice, scared the daylights out of me because I didn't know anybody's there, but somebody had walked down the trail and was just above me, and they were just saying, hey, the great fish, nice job, just being kind. And then I let that fish go and kind of looked up, and they were just standing there still, but there's still more fish to catch. So I caught another fish maybe 5 or 6 casts later, and then now there are 2 voices above me. Say, hey, good job, nice work. And then I released that one, and we chatted for a minute about where I was going. They were kind enough to ask whether I was going up or going down. I was heading up. They said, well, would we be in your way if we went downstream? I said, absolutely not. Thank you for asking. So they went down. They dropped right below me, so close that they could see what I was doing. Whoops. And I could see what they were doing. And long story short, I probably caught, another dozen or 15 fish in the next 15 to 30 minutes, somewhere in that time frame.
Wait. So you mean to tell me that you can catch a fish in 1 minute and land it and release it and keep fishing?
Depends on how good the fishing is, yeah.
All right, cool.
When they're rising and showing themselves like they were there. Absolutely. So whether I did it in 15 minutes or 45 minutes, doesn't matter. Either way.
We just need to get that out there.
All right, thank you.
Sick and tired of the exaggerations on this podcast.
So long story short, I caught a bunch more fish and then decided on one to end on. I like to do that most of the time, finish on a fish. And I reeled up and headed up to the truck. And as I did that, the 2 guys also headed to the truck. And we'd parked maybe 50 or 60 feet away from each other. And being the social butterfly that I am not, I kind of wandered up the trail and went to my truck and didn't really say anything. They were just behind me. Not with I would have had to yell, I guess, so I wasn't being totally a jerk. But I didn't say anything to them because when I'm fishing, I'm usually trying to leave people to be on their own. Anyway, I started breaking down my gear, and the older of the two gentlemen walked over to me and said, "Man, you were really getting them over there. What was working?" And I hesitated for a second because I didn't really want to spend a lot of time describing exactly what was going on. But I thought, I said, well, it was really what was working was more of a technique than the fly, because people always want the fly. What's the fly that's working? They think that no matter what, if they just had the fly, they'd catch all the fish. And so I told them, well, I caught them on midges, on purple parachutes, on bionic ants, on cicadas, on blueing olives, and caddis, corn-fed caddis. I think those are all the flies that I caught fish on that day. But all using the same long leader dry fly setup.
Which we have a video for
which we do
on the YouTube channel.
And he said, well, you were really laying casts out there nicely. You must not have been too long. He's like, were you fishing like a 9-foot leader? I said, no, it was more like 18 feet. And his eyes got about this big. And he said, how can you even cast 18 feet? And I said, well, it's not very easy, I'll admit. But if you get used to it, it has a huge advantage. And he insisted on seeing some of the flies. So I had some of the flies on my little CNF design pack right there, a little box. So I flipped it open and showed him some. The flies that caught the most were probably the bionic ant and the little bluewing. So I showed him those two the most. And I said, but again, it's less about these and more about the technique. And he was really just enamored with the flies. So I showed him the flies some more. And he said, so these were working? I said, yeah, but again, I caught him on a whole bunch of different flies, and it's the technique. And finally it started sinking in. He's like, well, what do you mean? I said, all right, this is slow, clear water. These are spooky fish. So when they walked down to the river, they just started casting immediately and casting in the same spot over and over and over with short, compact leaders, hard turnover, splashing the water. That's not going to work there. So I explained to him what I was trying to do was not make a cast until I either spotted a fish or saw a fish rise, and then I would cover it. But if you're just blindly casting in that water, you're scaring 3 fish to try and catch one, and the scared fish sound the alarm for all of them. So if you can just figure out where a fish is, make a good presentation, which sometimes takes half dozen casts, but get a good cast on them. More often than not, they eat as long as they're not spooked. So I tried to explain to him all that was going on there using the long leader and on and on. Anyway, I'm getting a long story here, but the bottom line was he's focused on the wrong thing, in my opinion. He's focused only on the fly, and it was much less the fly and much more how you're approaching the water. And to know how to do that, for him, fishing anything longer than a 9-foot leader was way out of his wheelhouse. That's just not something he's used to.
Well, maybe he usually fishes 7.5s.
He probably
Lance,
does. I think.
You ever think of that?
I didn't have to think about it. I watched it. I think they're fishing 5-foot leaders mostly.
2X?
It could have been. I don't know. But, they didn't have any success. And if he took the opportunity to learn from that and say, all right, I'm going to come back next time and fish as long of a leader as I can stand to cast and try some small light flies and only cast when I see fish or when a fish rises or something like that, he'll probably increase his catch rate. And that's not me trying to say, oh, look at me, I was great. He wasn't. It's just more of a.
We heard what we heard.
Yeah, you did.
Yep.
It's more of a point to just say, hey, that's exactly the kind of scenario where you can learn from anybody on the river. You can learn from people that have just figured something out that day, but they have figured out a different water type, a different fly that doesn't work on that river. There's all kinds of things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
There's all kinds of things to be learned, techniques, places, et cetera, et cetera.
The biggest eye-opener for me in the last, 5 to 7 years has been the stillwater game. I mean, we've fished stillwater for a long, long time. And just learning these new techniques like the Euro style, I guess, lock style.
Yeah, which aren't new to us, right?
No, they're new to us, but not to other people. But if you look at some of the flies that they use over in the UK for stillwater, you look at them and you're like, okay, that's stupid.
Yeah.
No, we have to have, slim mohair leeches or damsels or whatever we call it. But learning those techniques, you realize, there's a lot that we didn't know about stillwater when we thought, we know how to fish a stillwater. Our local favorite stillwater is Strawberry Reservoir. And what we've realized is if we can move around to different parts of the lake, the fish are for sure going to be eating, one of 6 different techniques. But if you were just to go out there in your float tube and cast out, 10 feet, kick and twitch, you don't need to cast super far because, by God, what you got to do is you just throw it out there and then you kick away from it. So you see a lot of that, where they're casting out not very far, they're letting a bunch of line out and then just pretty much trolling behind their float tube. Now that works, that's fine. But if you were to throw like a parabolic line, my favorite, with a stupid fab fly that looks like nothing like the fish are eating, when the fish start absolutely destroying that, you're just like, holy crap. There's something about this technique and coupled with these flies, coupled with the leader length, all those things all play into each other. But for me, it's really transformed my lake angling, where I feel like we could go to any lake and just go through the motions of trying out different lines, different techniques, different flies, and making it work. So if we were to do the kick and twitch, what do they call it? Joling? Jig and troll? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we don't do that very much anymore. You could, and you might catch fish still.
Oh, yeah, it's going to work for some fish.
But if you really want to get it dialed, catch more fish, then yeah. So this kind of brings up a question like, what is a good angler? Or what is a good day of fishing? It's all relative, right?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're a good angler. And everybody is somebody's best angler that they know, right? So, but there's always somebody better. There's always a technique that you could learn. There's always something that you need to learn in your skill set to be a better angler.
Most definitely. What about, there's another one that changed the fishing for me was multiple flies. So when I very first started, I fished one fly, right? Then you start learning indicator nymphing. For me, was where I started fishing 2 flies a lot. And then drying a dropper, 2 flies a lot.
Yep.
And then I kind of got used to that. In lakes, I'd fish 2 streamers a lot. And in Utah, for the longest time, we were only allowed to use 2 flies legally. I can't forget how many years it was, but it's maybe been 12 or 15 years back now. I kind of got in touch with some people at the Utah Division of Wildlife and lobbied for a 3-fly rule, and we got 3 flies legal in Utah now. So for me, fishing 3 flies was a real breakthrough, because on lakes, whether I'm fishing 3 streamers or fishing 3 dries or 2 dries and a dropper, it just, by spreading flies out, it allows you to cover that much more water. And same thing on rivers. Now, I don't often fish 3 flies on rivers, though you could, but fishing 2 streamers on a river instead of just 1, or fishing 2 nymphs on a nymph rig is much more effective than just 1. And we have a lot of customers that come in and are uncomfortable fishing just 2 flies, let's say, right? And that's normal. We all start there. We all start with 1 fly, then we move to 2. And if you feel comfortable with 2, then I would encourage you to move to 3. But that's another thing that I think you could try, even on, if you're pigeonholed onto just that 1 river, you don't have access to more places. Work on different things. There's always something you can work on. Adding flies to your rig is another one where legal.
One thing that I see with that is people always want to tie the flies in line. Mm-hmm. So learning the technique to tie a triple surgeon's knot, leave a tag so that fly actually moves, that's been a game changer. But when we're downstairs explaining that to people, they're just like, oh no, that's too complicated. That will tangle, that will do this, that will do that.
Well, then also casting.
Yeah.
I think huge. When it comes to 3 flies, because they're spread out, so it's okay if you know your knots and you can tie them on, but casting's kind of a different challenge. Mm-hmm. And so I usually just tell people, it's important to expand your skill set or techniques, but you also need to usually tweak your skill set to go along with that.
Totally.
So if you're going to be out there casting a 20-foot dry fly leader, let's say, you're going to need to practice the casting.
No doubt.
Or on the still water, if you've got 2 heavier leeches and a chironomid, let's say, and you need to cast enough distance to get that away from you so that you're covering fish and not scaring them, then and it's more difficult to cast 3 flies.
Right. So
along with all this, there's a lot of skills that you need to kind of up when you're talking about these techniques.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to point out, people, when we encourage them, as we do often, to fish 3 flies, especially on lakes, they come back and say, man, all I did is tangle.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, that's
It's
my
tough.
first time.
Yeah.
I did too. That's normal. I think the same is true. People forget, like when they went from fishing 1 fly to 2 flies, if you didn't ever tangle that, then you're my hero. Because I know I did. When I went from 1 fly to 2 flies, it tangles sometimes. When you go from 2 to 3, it tangles sometimes too. But eventually you get used to handling 3 flies or 2 flies as it may be, and you learn to cast it better. You learn to change your loop shape. You learn how to get them to kick over all the way and on, to where it becomes it's not really a worry anymore. Do you still tangle once in a great while? Of course, everybody does. It's part of it, but you're not tangling all day, spending all day retying.
You know, and that's another point. Like, I'm not advocating the fact that you need a different rod for every single type of fishing. But let's say you've got like a 4-weight and you want to go fish lakes and you want to really get into it, you probably do need to get like a 10-foot 6-weight. So having the right gear will help a lot. It's not saying that you can't do a lot of the techniques just with one rod. You certainly could try, but if you absolutely can, it's better to have the right gear, the right everything to try new techniques.
We talk a lot at to make the parallel of golf, right? You don't use your putter to drive a ball, and you don't use a driver to putt a ball.
But you can.
You could. You just can't do it very efficiently, right?
Right.
You could. And your score is
It may not be the most fun.
No, it won't be very fun.
I'd have fun with it.
I would probably too. That's because you're a hockey player playing golf today.
Right.
But there's just tech. Can you do most things with a 9-foot 5-weight? You can, right? But it's a happy medium on either end. So does a 9-foot 5-weight handle big streamers really well? No. Can it handle a streamer? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Does it handle really light, long, dry fly type techniques with super thin tippet really well? No. Can it do it? Yeah. But there's a better rod for that. So again, to your point, we're not saying you have to all go out, and not everybody's going to end up with 10 or 15 or 20 fly rods. But if you know you're going to fish small streams a bit, medium-sized rivers a bit, and do some streamer or lake fishing, you might get a 3, a 5, and a 6, or a 3, a 5, and a 7, or a 2, a 4, and a 6, or something like that in various lengths to cover your bases.
That's a good point. One other thing as well is tying your own flies is a big one, and not necessarily just so that you can always have what you need, but say you have a technique that you want to learn, or like you have a spot that you find, and there's a bug on the water that's unique that you can't find anything in the fly bins. If you tie your own flies, you can just go and make that fly. Also, a lot of times a fly that you have tied specific for a specific situation is going to work better than anything in the bin.
Yeah, you can make them float higher, make them easier to see, make them sink faster.
Better hooks that's the big thing. Like, there's so many good hooks out there, and
even color tweaks or little things that they just don't have that you have control over.
Add a hot spot, unless the fish in your river don't eat hot spots.
That is a possibility.
Or you can be like Brig and just turn everything into a thin mint. The thin mint zebra midge, the thin mint sow bug. Freaking Brig them. All right, but anyway, at the end of the day, what is being a good angler? Well, that's all relative. But the thing that you need to remember is you can always be better. And a big part of that is branching out, trying new spots, trying different sections of your same river, try different techniques. Just all those things are going to help you to be a better angler. And also, for me, a huge draw is when I learn a new thing, whether it's bass fishing, whether it's training a dog, or flying remote control airplanes, which I started doing lately, which is a ton of fun. But it helps you reset your brain into, holy crap, I had to start from ground zero with fly fishing as well. So, what is it that I'm doing now that I could do better, as if I were newer or more observant to what's going on.
Yeah, and it kind of injects a little bit more excitement into the sport.
For sure.
It just can rekindle some of that passion that you have for it, and increase the enjoyment overall. So there's a lot of things.
Cool. Well, this is kind of the way these are going to go, right?
Yeah, new format, part one.
30, 45 minutes. If we really get fired up and Lance starts yelling again, there'll maybe be an hour.
Dang.
Give us a like and a subscribe if you're listening on the podcast. Check us out on YouTube or flyfishfood.com. Lots of stuff we have really videos on all these techniques we've talked about, all the flies, if you want to do tutorials. But anyway, check it out.
And if you're driving, I want you to honk your horn right now. Just do it. Ready? 1, 2,
Don't do it.
3. Come on, Lance.